Hi everybody, this is Dixie Cravens with a very eroded metal tag. It's a variation on a technique that Tim Holtz teaches. And there are 3 examples that I have to show you the different things you can achieve with this technique. So I'm going to use some distress paints, and I am going to give myself a color background for this tag. It's not really going to show up, but it does add to the tag. And so you do need some color down. I have also used distress ink as the foundation, and that worked fine too. But today I was having fun playing with paint. So I have 3 colors, broken china, mowed lawn, and chipped sapphire, and I'm just putting them on my tag, and then I am going to blend them together with a paper towel. And again, it's not really going to show up, so this is a good way to use some of those mess up tags. You have a lot of color on it maybe, but it didn't work out the way you thought. But I just used the paper towel to kind of pounce around the tag and blend those colors together. And then I am going to dry it just quickly. It doesn't have to be completely dry, but dry enough that I don't transfer any paint to my next dabber, which is the tarnished brass metallic distress paint. And I am going to cover my entire tag with this color. This is where the metal part of this technique comes in. So I'm just giving it a good covering. It doesn't have to be thick, it just needs to be all over the tag. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and with a very light touch, I'm going to smooth out some of the texture left behind by the dauber top. I didn't want to take the paint off, I just wanted to smooth it out. And then I'm going to bring in my water bottle, and I'm going to do this spritz and flick technique with the water. And I want a generous amount of water on there, but I want it to be random. And then I'm going to let it sit for about 2 minutes. I want the water to break through that tarnished brass paint layer. I haven't let it dry, so it's going to come through that layer. And I'm going to lay down this paper towel after 2 minutes, and I'm going to pull it up quickly and pull some of that paint with it. And you can see I've got some spots in the metal going back through that original paint layer that had the blues and the greens. I'm going to dry this quickly. Again, it doesn't have to be completely dry. And then I'm going to come in with a dark brown ink. I'm going to use walnut stain ink, and we're going to start to highlight those areas where the paint has been pulled off. For the most part, distress paint resists ink, but you'll see that the ink does kind of stick down in those areas where the paint has been pulled off. And it's also sitting on top of the paint layer. And so once I get done putting ink all over this tag, I'm going to come in with my water bottle and really lightly mist it. And then I'm not going to touch it, but I'm going to dry it because I want that ink to kind of sit on top and add to that eroded look. And it's a subtle look, but it really does add to it. And I do want this layer pretty dry, and this is the way it would look if you stopped here, and that's where most of the time this technique stops. You see the color from the background kind of peeking through that metal. But I wanted to make it a little shinier, and I started playing around with mixing the 2 different colors of metals. This is the brushed pewter, and I really liked the effect that I got once it was completely done. So I'm starting all over again with applying the metal, the brushed pewter this time, just lightly brushing it smooth with the paper towel, and then I'm going to spritz and flick it again and let it sit for 2 minutes. So it's been sitting for about 2 minutes, and this time you'll see when I take it off with the paper towel, not as much of the paint comes off, but it does still come off, and you'll see when I add the ink that you start to get a really interesting effect. And you're starting to get an interesting color too, and you don't really see the full color until it dries completely. So to this point, the first time through, I was thinking, I don't think I like this. But once it really dried completely, I really liked the way the 2 different metals looked on top of each other. So again, I'm going to lightly mist this tag, and I'm going to immediately heat dry it because I want that walnut stain ink to stay and sit on top. Okay, so this is done, and I'm going to start adding some stamping to it. This is the Stampers Anonymous Papillon stamp set, and what I'm wanting is just a light almost faded stamping on there. So I'm not inking this up real hard, and then when I press it down, I'm not going to press it real evenly either. So I'm just going to give it a quick press, and you see that I've got some things are coming in real dark and some things aren't, and I'm just kind of adding some more random inking in areas where I wanted something a little darker. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to bring in this butterfly grouping, and I'm going to add these in a little bit darker, but I'm not going to stick them in the center of my tag. I'm going to stick them, I'm going to offset them some. Again, I'm using archival ink, the coffee color, because I knew that that would kind of blend in with that metal, especially when we get done with the next step. But you're going to love this. So I'm going to hit this with the heat gun just to make sure that this ink dries. It is permanent on top of the paint once it's dry. And now I'm going to stick it in a Sizzix Tim Holtz Alterations folder and run it through my Cuttlebug. And I wanted to make sure that I get those words on my tag, so that's kind of what I'm looking at to line up. It says postcard, I think is what it says. So I've run it through twice. I ran it through again a little bit on the side there so I could get the end of my tag embossed. And so you can start to see the embossing there. But I'm going to bring that archival ink coffee color back and rub it on top of that embossing. And this works because this pad is not juicy, and it's such a firm pad that you really only hit the raised areas. Again, I'm going to dry that really well because it does take a minute to dry on that paint, on the distress paint. And that is the end of that technique, and I have some close-up pictures for you. And now I'm going to go on and finish it. And here I've been playing around and messing around with what I think I want to do, and I have it all kind of laid out. I'm going to add this little tag by Stampers Anonymous, the Simple Sayings. I stamped it on a banner-sized piece of paper, and I'll cut it up later. I've used some Studio Calico sequins and wood veneers, and some Prima paper flowers. And so I've got it kind of laying there the way that I think I am going to glue it down. But we're going to make that little banner first, and I just cut a slit about halfway over. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm just got it cut out there, and I'm going to bring in some walnut stain ink and start to distress it so that it matches the tag. And I'll speed this up because it's easy to see what I'm doing here. Just adding ink along the edges. I want those edges to be really dark, and then I'm adding some ink on the top just to fade out that bright white. And then I'm just going to start gluing everything together. And this is Glossy Accents. It's my favorite wet adhesive. And this is my first time trying to glue sequins to anything, and I was finding that it took a little more glue than I thought. And I had sticky fingers, and everything was sticking to my fingers and not to the project, and so it's kind of funny, but I found that this method of putting things together works really well for me, because if I take it apart again, it never seems to go back quite the way I had it the first time. So I've stuck that wood veneer heart right on top of the sequin, and those wood veneers are from Studio Calico, came that dark, so I didn't even have to color it. I really like those dark wood veneers. I'm just gluing everything down and trying to get it back the way it was, and make sure I've got enough glue on everything that it will stay together. That one I thought needed to come down just a little bit further. Kind of had them all stacked up on top of each other, and that heart didn't want to stay glued down. I'm just going to trim this down so it will fit without too much pushing. And the Glossy Accents has about a 10-second drying time, about 10 seconds, sometimes 15 or 20, depending on what you have it sitting on, that you can kind of pull it back up and put it back down. I'm just bending it around to give it some character. And then we're ready to color the seam binding to match the tag. And I'm just going to take that walnut stain ink and press the ink pad into my craft mat and then add a little bit of water so that I have a fluid ink, and I can just pick it up with that seam binding ribbon. Just roll it around in there until I've got color, and I'm going to squish it up, squunch it up so it will kind of have that folded texture. And then I'm going to dry it, and it doesn't take long to dry. I cut out a lot of that part of the video, but here I am just folding it in half, and I'm going to push it through the hole in the tag and make a loop, and then I'm going to push the tails of my ribbon through that loop and pull. And there you go, it's finished. Pretty easy, simple project, and a really cool technique. Well, thank you for watching. Here's some close-ups of the finished tag. I hope you try this. I found that it was addicting because I kept thinking, what else can I do? Thank you for watching. Please follow me and find me on Facebook and Google Plus and on my blog.